For decades, Volvo has been making wagons that have been selling like crazy here in North America. And despite the changing trend to crossovers and smaller vehicles, Volvo is still one of the manufacturers that sells the most wagons here in Canada. Our retrospective is on this 1984 Volvo 240 DL and how it compares to today's 2019 Volvo V60 T6 Inscription. There's a lot of history between these two cars, but what has really changed over the last 35 years, and why are people still so interested in Volvo wagons? Now, it's very good that we have both of these cars here. First of all, there's 35 years between the 84 and the 2019 here. But originally I was looking at the 240 from a Canadian perspective because a lot of the 240s in the 80s were built in Halifax, Nova Scotia. However, this one actually is a Swedish built car. Both of these cars were built in Torslanda. So I think it's very cool that even though, technically the 240 was considered a mid-sized car at the time, or an executive luxury car, and this is more of a compact executive car. They both came off the same factory line, and they both do share some history together. I mean, they're both wagons. They're both more or less targeted towards entry-level people who are looking at getting something very unique and obviously wagon-based, but luxury-based as well. But I think it's very interesting to be able to actually take a look at a car like this because for a lot of people, the 240 was maybe their first Volvo, their first experience with a wagon, and it could be the reason why they are buying them still today because this is such an important car. And as far as I'm concerned, when you think of Volvo and you think of Volvo wagons, I think this is what comes to mind right away for a lot of people. So we're able to kind of take a look at these two cars here. Now, we're not going to spend our entire day, unfortunately, looking at the 240. We're just really looking at how they've evolved over time. And the one thing that you'll notice right away from the 240 here is just how big it is in comparison to the V60. I mean, the back window alone for the trunk area is almost as big as this entire car. It's huge. So I'd say probably from a length perspective, at least if you're looking at them visually, probably the new V90 would be more in line with the 240. But it is really interesting to have the two of these cars here together, and I hope you guys can appreciate seeing really the difference, the boxy design of what Volvo was doing before, now the more modern, streamlined, aggressive, Thor's hammer LED kind of look that they're doing with the new models. And really, I mean, if you were to park them side by side aside from the badge and knowing that they're both Volvos, there's not a whole lot between them that's similar, right? I mean, they're so different. The new one is just vastly different from the old one, but man, being able to park them side by side just is amazing. I really like it. I just like the look of these boxy designs. It's what made Volvo so popular. And I really do think that's why people are buying wagons here today, even though, even sedans in general just are dying in North America. Volvo is still doing pretty well with their V series wagons. And again, it helps because of this. So we're going to have some shots here for you guys. You can take a look at the two of them parked beside each other. We will go more in depth now with the V60 and to be able to show you everything about that. But again, really special moment being able to have these two cars here together to be able to show them off so that you can see the evolution. 35 years, not only of Volvo design, but just design in general. I mean, from the 80s, this really was what cars looked like. And today I'd say that the V60 really represents today's modern design and engineering. I seem to have to say this all the time now, but I'm sure people are busy typing away telling me that I was wrong and that the 240 DL we featured was in fact assembled in Canada, and it's true. After I came home, I thought long and hard about it and figured it was weird having a Swedish VIN, but all the information I found online said that all 240s were built in Canada, especially for the Canadian market. So I reached out to our Volvo press rep and she told me exactly what I had started to kind of come up with, that the vehicle started its life off in Sweden. It was stamped with that Swedish VIN, and then it was shipped overseas to Halifax, Nova Scotia, where it was finally assembled and then shipped off to dealers all across. So that's why it has a Swedish VIN, even though it is technically assembled here in Canada. I think it's cool that we're able to feature a car that was built here from 35 years ago. And another thing that we noted too, after we filmed that introduction segment, we parked these two cars next to each other, and they actually are roughly the same size. The wheelbase on the V60 here is quite a bit longer, but the actual length is much more similar. The 240 DL is a little bit longer because of those 5 mile per hour bumpers, but we were wrong on that, thinking that the V90 would be a bigger size. because from the looks of it, it certainly does look that way with the 80s car, just because those back windows are so massive. But anyway, let's talk a little bit more about the V60 T6 Inscription here. It is similar to what we featured with the 2019 XC60 in terms of tech, safety features, and overall kind of what you get from it. There is no hybrid option here in Canada. They do have them in Europe, and I'm sure we will get the twin engine all-wheel drive hybrid system at some point. But for now, you're looking at essentially the best of the best when it comes to the V60. There are a couple packages on this that aren't on this car. You can get things like massaging seats, the charcoal headliner, and a head-up display, but everything else is optioned on it. Up front, we have some of the best adaptive LED headlights we've used. While the high beams might not be as bright as we saw in something like the S90, the adaptive functionality on these are fantastic. The amount of radius that they actually have when they turn around a corner is unmatched. You also have IntelliSafe, all the safety tech, forward advanced braking, lane keep assist, lane departure warning, collision avoidance, all that stuff, all built into the windshield mounted camera system there. You have power folding mirrors on the side, 360-degree camera, we've talked about that before, front and rear parking sensors that are really integrated into some of the trim, makes it a little bit more hidden, and essentially the rest of the design that you would come to expect from a modern Volvo. But this car is much sexier as far as I'm concerned because it's a wagon. So let's go around back now, we'll talk about what's going on there and why I just love this car so much. Oh boy, what a good looking car. I just love Volvo's current design language. And the problem with their design language is it's so damn good, it makes the previous generation look pretty dated. I mean, the previous V60 was very bubbly, especially around the back. It was kind of curved off. The edges were really shaved down to make it bubbly, but this is a really good look, not super sporty. So if you're still into something that is relatively conservative, but not too sporty, this is a good option for you. But I just like the look of a wagon. You get pretty much all the functionality and space of a crossover. Okay, you lose out a little bit on ground clearance, but I think that this is a much better car. It handles better, drives better. I enjoy driving this way more than I have pretty much any other crossover, especially given the size of this. I really like it. Now the back here is similar to what we've seen essentially on all of Volvo's current vehicles. Something again like the XC60 has a very similar rear end here, similar space to it. You do have a power opening trunk. You can also swipe your foot underneath to be able to open it up. Space back here is fantastic. It is a wagon, that's the whole point of it. You get just as much room as you would in terms of depth and length as in a sedan, but you get the added height of having a wagon. So if you really did need to load it up with things, you could do that. There are release buttons to be able to push these back row seats down so you can have even more storage space. We're not going to do it with what we're doing here. I don't have anything really to haul in it, but if I took off the privacy screen, you could do it. And the one issue I've had with the car, actually it's not with the car, it's with me, but the privacy screen here clicks into place. We saw this on the XC60, and then when you want to use it, you just kind of flip it up. But because I'm so unused to driving a wagon, I keep forgetting to pull this bad boy back down when I'm done with it, and I end up having to get out of the car after a couple minutes because I can't see out of the back. You've got a button to be able to close it as well as lock the car, and I mean there's not much else to it. You do have a rear fog light. We see this pretty much only with Volvo and some Mercedes-Benz and Audi models, but I like it. And as I said at the front, parking sensors are more or less integrated into some of the trim. So the reflectors along the bottom, there's a parking sensor in there to hide it a little bit. But for me, this is a great looking car. I really like the look of it. So let's jump inside now. We'll talk about the features there, and then we will take it on a road test. Yes, the interior of a wagon. I am really excited to finally be in here and showing it off. Very similar to the XC60. So really, if you want to know absolutely everything, go take a look at either that video or even the S90 that we did. We really went into depth with it. I want to talk about a couple things on the inside here. Space is very good. If you think about this, it's supposed to compete in the same segment as a BMW 3 Series or 4 Series, which we've driven both of, even though this is a front-wheel drive vehicle. So I guess it would compete with some of the front-wheel drive vehicles in the segment, not that there's many of them in the luxury world, but I do find that space here is good. Both horizontal and vertical space is excellent. I'm very comfortable sitting in here. Again, if you got the massaging seat package, be even better up here, but you do have heat and ventilation for the front seats. You also have a heated steering wheel, 3 stages for that, really works well, plus heated outboard rear seats in the back. Now, a lot of people said to me that the 2019 versions of Sensus would be better than what we were featuring before. even though this is still a 2019 just like the other ones, I don't see any improvement. In fact, we've had a couple issues with Sensus, specifically when it came to the enhanced audio system, whether they're using a active noise cancellation or an engine enhancement system. It did fail when Sensus crashed a couple days ago, and you could actually hear this ringing, tingling sound coming through the speakers when the engine would rev up. Really annoying, and actually took a little bit for it to reset itself. So it's a bit of a problem there. I still find that it's very slow when you start it up and you're trying to use any of the features. It takes a little while to get it going. I'm really hoping that this new Android system that's been rumored will be the new system for Sensus moving forward, because I really do find that this could be improved. And that would be the one thing. If I really were to buy this car, Sensus is the thing holding me back. Now you have 3 packages on here: cold weather package, the vision package, and the convenience package. Those add a lot of the things like the heated windshield wiper area here. And we like the windshield wipers. They're built in with the nozzles, so it all works. Same with the back one. You have the heated seats and everything, heated steering wheel with that package. And you also have the Bowers & Wilkins audio system. It is pricey, but I think it's worth it. You definitely have great sound in here, especially for a compact vehicle. Pretty much blows the competition out of the water. You also have quad zone climate control, which is really rare in this segment. You can control it from the front or the rear, and you have child lockouts. Along with the doors, it's a button that will lock out the windows and the rear doors. It's a really nice thing to have. Aside from that, though, everything else is pretty much set up the same way that we saw with the other vehicles from Volvo. Again, you can have a head-up display if you wanted to. Charcoal headliner, which I actually don't mind too much here, I guess because the wood sort of contrasts it a little bit, but there are some options. But anyway, I want to take this car on a road test. I've been driving it as much as I can over the last week, and I'm sure you guys want to see it on the road too. So let's take it on a road test and go over everything you need to know about the 2019 Volvo V60. Well, if you were wondering what kind of seasons we have here in Quebec, we've got the dead of winter, where everything is minus 20 degrees Celsius, and then we've got rain. That's pretty much it. There's no in between. Today is a rain day, not really my favorite, but at least we're driving an all-wheel drive Volvo Estate. It's a safe car, even though it might not be that reliable. And I say that because, as I mentioned while we were doing the walk-around segment, the audio system gave us some trouble along with the entire Sensus unit. But then yesterday morning I woke up, and you might have noticed on our B-roll footage of the interior that the check engine light is on. And they are for 3 different codes. 2 of them are pending, one of them is an actual fault, and it relates to emissions control. Essentially, they detect some sort of leak in the system and check the gas cap. There is actually no gas cap. It's one of the capless systems. I'm not a huge fan of them. I cleaned around it to see if there was maybe any debris. I've cleared the codes 1,000 times, but it's on all the time. So that is something that we need to talk about, because this car has 2,400 kilometers on it, and the check engine light has already come on, and it really seems like the last 2 Volvos we've had problems. We had issues with the XC40 when we featured it. So it is important for us to note, because if you were to have bought this car and you were already 2,400 kilometers in, which really isn't that much driving, and your check engine light is already on, I don't think you're going to be too happy, especially if you're spending the $66,000 Canadian it is for this car. You're not going to be a very happy camper. So it's important for us to mention that. I'm sure it is an easy fix. I can't fix it here by clearing the codes, and I've tried everything I can, so something to note. Now, I do want to do a little bit of performance stuff here. We do have a very straight piece of road here. I've put the car into individual mode, and we had some people comment last time when we did Volvos that if you set up things through individual, you can actually turn off the auto start stop system. Normally you have to go through the Sensus system to do it, but by doing it this way, you can basically just, again, you still have to go through the system, you still have to change the drive mode, but then it's off all the time. Now keep in mind, this is a front wheel drive car. It's all wheel drive, but it's a front wheel drive chassis, so it's not going to be really the same kind of performance or sport feel that you get from, say, a BMW, Mercedes, or an Audi. But we'll give it a shot. It is a twin charged engine. It is a little wet, but the road here is actually pretty straight, pretty flat, and relatively paved. So let's give it a shot. Oh yeah. Oh, and that's why I like these twin charge. There's no turbo lag. 100. There's no turbo lag because the supercharger makes up for that lag. And if you watched our video a couple weeks ago, we did a number of videos on the 2019 Kia Stinger GT line, and well, these are certainly different cars. One issue that I had with the Stinger was the turbo lag, and it wasn't really an issue, but it's just something to note. When you go off the line, there's very little power, but because this is twin charged, you have no issues with that. You have almost instant power. Now, it's not blistering speed like you get on maybe a M performance car, M340i, but still, I mean, I think it's really good, especially if you look at the base models or entry-level models for any of the compact executive sedans from the German manufacturers. They're around 250 horsepower. So you get more power with this. It is a wagon, so you do have a little bit of extra weight coming out of the back there, so it makes sense that you'd want to have a little bit more power. But I mean, for daily stuff, man, this is a really solid engine, assuming that the check engine light is just related to some stupid fault that isn't really an engine problem. But we have had comments about that because this is such a complicated engine. What is going to be the long-term reliability of it? And I was pretty happy with them before, but now I'm starting to wonder what is going to be the reliability. We already have an issue with this one. I have done a lot of driving with the V60, almost 1,000 as of now. I find that the ride is really smooth, even without Volvo's 4C suspension system that we saw on the S90 and their larger crossovers. I find that the ride is really smooth, especially going through these corners here. And we're not going to be going too quick just because it is essentially freezing rain that's coming down right now. But it's really comfortable. I mean, the seats are so comfortable. The ride is really good. You do hear a little bit more of the road. Not necessarily the road, I guess. The tires here aren't the best of the best when it comes to tires, so I'm sure you can get something that's a little quieter. But you do hear the exhaust a little bit more in this car, maybe because it is a wagon, but you also hear the engine too, and some people might like that, some people might not. If you're like me right now, you've turned off the radio, obviously because I'm filming, but even when I have it on low, I can hear that supercharger winding up, and then you can hear the turbo blow-offs. And I think it's just awesome having both of those just excellent sounds coming out of an engine at the same time. That's pretty great. You definitely will not hear it on the video just because our recording equipment will not pick it up, but I'll see if I can hear it here. I'm going to turn down the fan speed. You hear the engine, you can hear the exhaust. Oh yeah, there's that supercharger. Oh man, I love it. Oh, I love it. I really hope I hope by the time we actually publish this, I'll have a little comment pinned on the top and say Volvo got back to us. The issue was, I don't know, somebody put the wrong fuel in it before, because I've been using V-Power, because my motto anytime we're doing a performance car, and especially when I drove my BMW, is it's V-Power or no power. So you got to put premium in here. Maybe somebody did not fill that up. I don't know. Honestly, there's really no reason why there should be an evap leak on a brand new car, but there it is. But what else can I tell you about the Volvo V60 other than the fact that this is probably one of the best cars I've driven? It is the most practical car that I've driven because you have all that space in the back. Not that I've needed it this week. We did a small grocery run earlier in the week. I didn't film it, but you can fit everything in the back there. You've got tons of space. My daughter is super comfortable. I am insanely comfortable. Like I said, the seats here are just next level when it comes to overall comfort. Volvo is doing black magic when it comes to these things, man. I'm telling you, if you're looking for a seriously comfortable car, especially in this segment, because you're looking at the smaller cars here, this is really something that stands out. And I've mentioned it to some people, I've mentioned it to some of the friends that I talked to, both in and outside of the press circuit, and I said if I needed a car on a daily basis, this is definitely one that I would consider. I know I said that about the Kia Stinger, and I certainly would. I would get the Kia Stinger GT Limited. But if I needed something a little bit more practical, this is the one. I mean, out of the back there is just great. And I finally figured out I got to put that shade down to keep my rear window open. Something that I have pretty much done every single time I've got into the trunk. I've left it open. I'm getting the hang of it now. But it's just such a great car. I'm really happy that I finally got the chance to drive this. I'm hoping that Volvo will have more wagons on the road. We're already trying to book more wagons on the show, so you're going to see more of it. If you're like me and you just love these kinds of cars, then we're going to be doing a lot more of it over the next little while. Spending a week with the 2019 Volvo V60 T6 Inscription didn't disappoint. We averaged 7.7 liters per 100 kilometers or 30 US miles per gallon on our 100 kilometer test loop and averaged out to 9.1 liters per 100 kilometers or 26 mpg during our 1,000 kilometer plus week. These numbers were very close to what we did with the 2019 BMW 430i Grand Coupe and recently with the 2019 Kia Stinger GT line. The fact that Volvo still makes wagons for the Canadian market is a huge plus. Along with the overall exterior styling from the V60 makes this a seriously attractive option, both physically and spiritually. Interior seat comfort is easily the best in the segment, with some reality-bending ergonomics that we can't figure out. Also, the overall power is great, considering this isn't the Polestar version. Having a 316 horsepower twin-charged inline-4 allows you to say goodbye to that typical turbo lag associated with these smaller engines. Finally, the LED headlights are incredibly good, especially with the adaptive functionality enabled. We had no problems at night with the V60 along our dark country roads. But not everything was rosy during our week. We reported 2 issues that we had with this vehicle. Census will remain on our top dislike, as we still found overall processing power limited and startup lag was some of the worst on a modern vehicle. Not to mention the audio problems we had that were directly related to Census crashing on startup. Also, the check engine light is a serious concern for us, as a vehicle with 20,000 kilometers should have no sorts of problems at all, let alone a $64,000 luxury car that's only driven a tenth of that. The available colors on the V60 is also pretty boring, with red being the only punch you can get outside of 14 shades of gray. I want to see some color thrown into the mix, adding to the boring dystopian color palette. Quality control and overall reliability is our biggest concern going forward. While our other colleagues out in Toronto haven't reported any issues with their V60 test units, nor any issues with the XC40 like we experienced, we're hoping that this is an isolated problem that will be fixed by Volvo. Regardless of how much you spend on a car, you want it to work, especially during the warranty period. It's easy for us to get caught up in the excitement of driving a nice wagon such as this, but we're going to have to keep a close eye on Volvo to see if improvements are made on this front with future press cars that we get.